Hi, today's video I'm going to be showing how to set up a Kubernetes cluster from scratch. In this video we're going to use a cloud operator, but I'm not going to use any of the managed Kubernetes services. I'm just going to use just pure VMs and maybe just pure load balancer infrastructure, and hopefully you see that it's fun to watch. So let's get started. Alright, so in order to get started we need to sign up for we need to essentially create VMs. Well, technically I could create VMs, on some hardware that I have lying around, but for the sake of this tutorial I'm just going to use a cloud provider called Linode. So what they do is they give you like free VMs for you to use and just some lightweight tools so that you can just install whatever you want, and their pricing is pretty good, which is part of the reason why I'm using Linode for this tutorial. So let's begin. All right, so first I need to log in, and that should be easy. Don't worry, I'll put a link in the description for you to be able to use that to sign up. So as you can see, I already have some nodes here, but I'm not going to use any of these. I'm going to create one from scratch. So we come here, new Linode, and it's going to ask you for the image. So this is going to be the base image that you that your VM is going to have. So I like Ubuntu. We're going to stick with Ubuntu, and when we pick Ubuntu, that will be the operating system for the base image. I can now select the region. Typically you want a region that's close to you, so because I'm in Africa, obviously it's with one of the European regions, so I'm going to pick London, UK, and I'm going to create a standard plan of 2 gigabytes. You could pick Nano, but in my experience this Nano is really slow. So when I pick this lightweight 2 gigabytes, it's just $10 a month, flat rate, 2 gigs of RAM, 50 gig hard disk, and 1 CPU, which is kind of cool. And then we just need to give it a label. I suggest you give it a very good name. So we're going to call this Learn. Or we're just going to say Kubernetes Master. That's the name of our cluster, Kubernetes or whatever. And then we can add some tags to it. So I could say cluster, Kubernetes, master, control pane, and so on. And here I'm supposed to put a password, so it's a good idea to put a very secure password here. Then this is really important. I now need to specify an SSH key. I will look for links in the description of how to generate an SSH key, but in summary, once you've generated your SSH key, you should have 2 files. So if you go to your user profile under C, under your user profile, just go to .ssh. You should see a file here called id_rsa, which is your private key, and id_rsa pub, which is your public key. So we're going to pick the private key. I'm just going to open it in VS Code. Sorry, the public key rather. It's okay if people see this because it's a public key, although I will just show it to you anyway. So when you're done, you can just click add SSH key, paste it here, give it a name. So I can say Ody tries. Typically you want it to be your email, because if you notice there's an email at the bottom, gmail.com, right? And you add the SSH key. As you can see, oh okay, it's just say Ody tries and add the SSH key. It's already there, so no need to repeat it. But it is super important you check this checkbox. I can't iterate it well enough. Trust me on this. You don't want to forget about this, because that would mean that you would need to use your password to log in, and for what we are trying to do, this will not work. And then you have the option of backups if you want to have regular backups and stuff like that. But this is also important, private IP. So there are 2 types of IPs in Linode. The VM you're creating is going to have 2 IPs. The first IP is the public IP, which you get for free and by default. That public IP is accessible from anywhere. The only problem is they charge you for it. Whereas the private IP, any traffic that goes through the private IP is essentially free. So you don't get charged for private IP, which is cool. So now that I've selected all this is my Kubernetes master. I'll go ahead and create it. And now I'm supposed to repeat this 2 extra times for the 2 nodes I'm going to create. So as it's booting up, we pick another one. So I come here, add new node. We pick Ubuntu 1904, the same London UK, the same Linux plan. This would be Kubernetes node 1, node 01. Okay, I give it cluster Kubernetes, not control pane, just a node. Alright, give it the same password. But even if you don't give it the same password, you still have the option of resetting the password. The SSH key is already here, so make sure you check this and you check private IP. So that is the first, that's the second node that's being created. And then finally we head over to the last one. So we come here, pick 1904 London UK, select this, and this time this would be Kubernetes node 02. I'm just going to stop here. You could create more nodes in future, like as many as you want, as many as you can afford. So Kubernetes node, right? It's not control plane, so that goes. And then so add SSH key, private IP. We create that as well. As you can see, they're all $10 a month, which is really good. It's not really cheap, but compared to, trust me, compared to other Kubernetes installation, this is super cheap, and you're just paying a flat fee. So that's really cool. So once the second one is done, the next thing we need to do is to come here and create a repository, right? We're going to create a Git repository that's going to hold like the state of our cluster. All right, so to do that, I just head to projects. Let's say YouTube, let's just say create cluster, and we open this, select the folder, and I create a file. So the file I'm going to create is called cluster.yaml, right? Now in this cluster.yaml, I'm going to essentially describe this my cluster here. Okay, but first off, I think the first thing I would need to do is to head over to GitHub. So the instructions for this tutorial are here. GitHub, Ody tries Kubernetes, and just give it a moment. Good. So I have lots of instructions and manuals, and as I learn this Kubernetes and as I use it, as I deploy stuff, I put like the most important pieces of info and script here. So whether it's setting up a Kubernetes dashboard or X509 certificates or traffic ingress controller and complicated stuff, all of it is here. Also, I am also accepting pull requests. So if you see any errors, or you want to help improve the documentation, or you want to add stuff of your own, just send me a pull request. We'll review it and merge it in. So in this case, we want to set up just a cluster, but because we're going to be using a tool called Rancher, right? So we're not going to use everything here, but the main part is what applies. This step is if, for example, you're dealing with a server that you couldn't check the SSH keys. Then this is the way of manually moving your SSH keys to the server. But you need to be using Ubuntu or Windows subsystem for Linux. All right, so now that's done, the first thing we need to do is to SSH into okay, let's SSH into all the VMs. Okay, in order to do that, I would need Windows. I will need this dude right here. So here, let's pick the master, right? To SSH, you just move over to networking, and then in networking you just copy this address, and then we paste it here. Just copy this command here, come here, paste it, say yes, and I should be logged in almost instantly. Good. I can segment that. This is one of the new features of Windows Terminal. It allows you to split windows. So I can select that and head over to node 1. So I copy node 1. Where is it? Networking. Copy this, apply it here. So I'm into, say yes, I have node 1 now, and finally node 2 as well. So I copy the same, head over to networking, copy the same SSH ID, and I'm gonna split this as well. Let me see. Let me split it vertically. So here I can paste this. Sorry, copy this, paste this, and I'm in. Okay, so I've SSH'd into all three VMs that make up my cluster. The first thing I'll do is to set up Docker on all of them. To make my life simple, you could just copy this entire code verbatim and just paste it. Okay, come here, paste it, come here, paste it as well. So let's go ahead and just to confirm. Okay, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, maybe I should just go through the motions. I think something is wrong with my script. Okay, so that's 2. It's quite easy. This is 3. This is 4. This is 5. This is 6. 6. And this is 7. Okay, repeat the same here. Yeah, and we are done. Okay, so to prove that there's Docker here as well. Yes, we're done. Just a few instructions you run. The details are on each command. So once we're done with all this, we now need to describe our cluster. So I'm going to copy this so that I don't have to type it by hand, and we're going to paste it here. Okay, now this is called the cluster.yaml file. This file, essentially, its job is to describe your cluster. So we're going to do a few things. Let's start with the first one. So the first one is we need to give this our cluster a name. So let's just call this cluster, let's call this cluster Kubernetes Cluster, and we will generate we just need the IP addresses. So as you can see, there are 2 IP addresses here. This is the internal, this is the external IP, this is the internal IP. So for the external IP, we put that at the top here. Then for the internal address, the one that the nodes are going to use to communicate with each other, we want that to be private IP, so that's free, or at least it doesn't cost us money. And then you put your username, which in this case is root. And this is the second most important part. This is where you describe the roles of that particular node. Okay, so if you want the node to be like a master node, like in this case, you want to give it the roles control plane and etcd. That's because etcd is the database, or essentially the thing that keeps the state of the entire cluster, and control plane is essentially, it has all the management pods or management tools and so on and so forth. Multiple nodes could be control planes, and multiple nodes could host your etcd, but in practice you typically want to reserve that job to just one node in your cluster, and that node you shouldn't deploy things on it. The reason is that that's your management node, and if it goes down, you can't really send changes or do fixes to your cluster, amongst other things, amongst even security reasons and so on and so forth. So this is important, so we leave that there. And then we want to have some services. So in this case, etcd, which is the database, it should take snapshots of the DB as backups, and it should do that every 6 hours with a retention rate of 24 hours. So if anything goes wrong, you should have all the backups for the past 24 hours, which is cool. Network plugin, we want to use Weave. Network plugin is essentially the infrastructure that binds all the what do they call it, all the pods in the worker nodes. It's called the container networking interface, and this weave has an implementation of it. So it's how the overlay network, yes. So it's how pods inside of the cluster will be able to talk to each other irrespective of which node that they are on physically. So this is what helps that happen. Okay, that's what weave does. And then you specify an ingress. An ingress is essentially what does routing to your services. So typically you want to just leave it with Nginx the way it is here. Once you're done, right, also keep in mind that the machine you're running, they're about to run the command from to essentially create your cluster. You should be able to just SSH into that machine without using username or password, which is what I showed you earlier. All right, so let's go ahead and do the remaining two. So just copy this, come here, paste it twice, right? And let's head over to those nodes as well. So let's go to node 1, copy this, put it in the address, paste it here, copy the internal IP. If you notice the internal IP, they are mostly in the same range, which tells you that they are VMs that are close together, or machines that are close together. And finally, Kubernetes O2. Let's go to networking. Let's pick SSH. Sorry, not SSH. I just needed the IP address, the external IP address, 8.5. Fine. And then the internal IP address would be 100, private IP, if you will. Okay, so but for the remaining two, we just want them to be worker nodes. So remove this, remove etcd as well. Repeat the same for control pane here, and remove etcd as well. So we just have worker nodes, right? So now that this is done, we've been able to describe our cluster. Keep in mind that this file, you probably want to put it in source control and check it into your repository, because it's going to it's like the textual representation of your cluster. Whenever you want to add new nodes to the cluster, all you just need to do is add it here and run the command again. So the command I'm talking about here is rancher. So for that, we just head to RKE, called the rancher Kubernetes Engine, and it is quite easy to download. So let me just, I'll also put the link in the description of where to download rancher, but all you just need to do, let's just go to GitHub RKE, and that should take us to, that should bring us here. Thank you. All I just need is the releases, and I head over to version 0.3. You download for your particular operating system. So if you're on Windows, you download AMD 64, or if you're on x86, or if you're on Linux, or if you're on Mac OS, and so on and so forth. But I already have that. So once you download it, it's just a single executable. You put it in your path, and then you should be able to come here and run it. So let me exit this. I don't need any of this anymore. Exit as well. Exit as well. Okay, I was overzealous in my exiting. All right, so finally, what we want to do is we want to head over to C projects, YouTube, cluster. Yes, no, it was called Kubernetes. It was called, yeah, create cluster. So now that I'm in, what I need to do next is to just say RKE, right? And as you can see, it's showing me. So this shows that I have rancher already running locally. So all I need to do is just say rancher up, and then I will say config, and I will say cluster.yaml, right? And when I run this, what it will do is it will, as you can see, create SSH tunnels into all 3 VMs. It will use the Docker that's there to automatically set up the Kubernetes pods and all of that. So with the magic of video editing, we'll just head over to when it's done. All right, so we're done, and as you can see that it has this cluster.rke state, which essentially has the entire, like, it houses the state of our cluster, including all the nodes, the IP addresses and all that. Don't worry about all this, I'll still, take everything down when I'm done. Then also you get a Kubernetes config file, right? So this config file essentially is what you would use to connect to your cluster. And if you notice, it has the IP address of your cluster, of your master node, and it has some certificate authorities and all that, so they can use to log into the cluster as a administrator. And in fact, to prove that that's the case, I'm going to just say kubectl get pods, all namespaces, right? And we say config, say cube config cluster. Oops, sorry, it's cube config, not just config. And as you can see, it's showing that I have stuff running already. So it has the Weave network running in them, and some other plugins and stuff like that. So yeah, this is a fully fledged cluster, and in order to use it, instead of constantly having to specify the config file, the next thing we could easily do is to just copy that config file. So you can just come here, Revealing Explorer, copy the config file, head over to your user profile. You see, you can, if it's not there, you can create it a .cube directory. You paste the config file. I can just back up my existing config, and all we just need to do is just rename this as config with no extension on it. So with this in place, we're done. Okay, so now all I just need to say cube get, just the same command, except I don't need to specify the cube config file, and indeed it's showing that everything is running well. So I hope with this video I've been able to show you how to set up a Kubernetes cluster from scratch using Rancher and just pure VMs. In the next series of videos, I'm going to show you how to install a Rancher so that you can easily do like management of your cluster with relative ease. I'm also going to show you how to set up storage controllers and all this other stuff. But I hope you were able to learn something. If you found this video useful, just give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye.